She was twice my age, my landlady, and completely off limits, until the night she touched my arm and said, "You're safe here." I never expected safety to feel like falling in love. I moved in on a Tuesday. The kind of gray-skied afternoon that makes everything feel heavier than it should, the boxes, the air, even my breath. The ride-share driver barely said a word as he helped me with my things. I didn't blame him. I wasn't exactly good company. The house was tucked between tall hedges on a quiet street, old but well kept, like it had a history that someone actually cared about. Faint ivy crept along one side of the porch, and wind chimes clicked gently in the breeze. There was something comforting in how still everything was. She opened the door before I could knock. "Hi," she said with a small smile, voice warm and low. "You must be, yeah. Sorry I'm a little early." "Better early than never," she replied, stepping aside to let me in. Her name was Claire. She looked to be in her early 40s, maybe a few years older, but carried herself with the kind of elegance that didn't draw attention to itself. Wavy dark hair pulled back loosely, simple gold earrings, jeans, and a sweater that looked soft enough to fall asleep in. She had the kind of presence that made the space feel calmer, like you were less likely to break something just by being near her. The hallway smelled faintly of jasmine and something baked, lemon, maybe. Hardwood floors creaked softly beneath my shoes as she led me up the stairs, her hand resting lightly on the banister. I caught myself watching the way she moved, unhurried, like she had nothing to prove to anyone anymore. "This used to be my son's room," she said as we reached the landing. "He's grown now. Lives out west. I've made a few changes, hope it still feels like your own space." She opened the door to a room washed in late afternoon light. Cream-colored curtains swayed gently at the window. There was a simple desk, a made bed, a shelf with a few novels and an old ceramic lamp. It was cleaner than I'd expected, but lived in, somehow. Not sterile. "I like it," I said quietly. "Thank you." She turned toward me then, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. "If you need anything at all, just knock. I'm usually around." Her hand briefly touched my back, the space between my shoulder blades, as she stepped past me to leave. Just a small, instinctive gesture. But I felt it linger longer than it should have. Warm, grounding. When the door clicked shut behind her, the room felt suddenly full. Like I'd brought something invisible in with me. I stood there for a while, not unpacking. Just listening to the quiet house, the faint sound of her footsteps below, the creak of floorboards as she moved through her own life, and I wondered why that simple touch stayed with me long after it should have faded. I came here looking for space. Instead, I found her. The first few mornings were quiet. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just still. I'd come downstairs around 7:30, always a little earlier than I needed to. There was something grounding about hearing the kettle whistle, the faint clink of ceramic mugs, the smell of toast and coffee already drifting through the house. Claire was always there before me, barefoot, hair loosely tied up, wearing one of those soft, oversized cardigans that looked like they'd absorbed years of warmth. She moved around the kitchen like someone who had long ago made peace with her routines. Everything was slow but sure. She didn't rush. She didn't fill the silence just to fill it. And strangely, I found that calming. "Sugar?" she asked on the second morning, holding out a small bowl. I nodded. "Just a little." She gave a slight smile. "You strike me as a, just a little, kind of person." I wasn't sure what that meant, or if it was a compliment, but it stayed with me all day. Some days we'd talk, in the soft tones reserved for early hours, weather, errands, the odd neighborhood cat that liked to nap on her porch swing. Other days we'd sit quietly, sipping our coffee at the small kitchen table, the light coming in through the east-facing window and making everything look softer than it really was. I started to notice things. The way she always kept her hands wrapped around her mug, like she needed the warmth more than she let on. The way she hummed under her breath when she was focused, not a melody I recognized, just a string of quiet, content notes. The way her smile shifted when she was listening versus when she was hiding something. One morning, our hands brushed when we both reached for the jar of honey. A quick, accidental thing, skin to skin, just the backs of our fingers. But neither of us pulled away right away. She glanced at me, then quickly down, withdrawing her hand with a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. "Sorry," she said. "I'm not used to sharing my kitchen." "It's okay," I replied. "I'm not used to being in one." That made her smile, full this time. And something flickered in her eyes, curiosity, maybe. Or caution. She offered to show me how to make real scrambled eggs that weekend. "The proper way," she said, "not the college microwave method." I agreed, too quickly. Later that night, I lay in bed thinking about how close we sat at that tiny table. How her elbow had almost touched mine. How the light had caught on the faint lines near her eyes when she laughed, not flaws, but evidence. Of life, of years, of stories I didn't know yet. I wasn't trying to fall for her. But mornings stopped feeling quiet. They started feeling like something I didn't want to miss. It started with thunder in the distance. Low and rumbling, like the sky had a secret it hadn't decided whether to share. I was upstairs reading when the lights flickered once, then again, then went out completely. I waited a few seconds, half expecting them to come back on. They didn't. I could hear rain begin to tap against the roof, gentle at first, then harder, steady, unrelenting. The room dimmed to blue-gray shadows. I stood, stretching, unsure what to do. That's when I heard her voice, floating up the stairwell like candle smoke. "You okay up there?" I stepped out onto the landing. "Yeah. Just lost the page I was on." She laughed softly. "Come down if you want. I've got candles." I did. Not just because of the storm. Because of her. The kitchen was glowing, a few pillar candles flickering on the table, one on the windowsill. The power outage made everything feel softer, quieter, as if the house itself had taken a breath. Claire was kneeling near the cabinet, pulling out a blanket. She looked up and gave me a sheepish smile. "Storms make me nervous. Always have." She laid the blanket out on the living room floor. "You don't have to stay down here, but it's nicer with two people." I sat down beside her, legs crossed, and accepted the cup of tea she offered. Peppermint. Still warm. Her fingers brushed mine as she handed it over. Rain lashed the windows now, rhythmic and loud. Thunder cracked again, closer this time. For a while, we just sat. Candlelight danced across her face, highlighting her cheekbones, catching in the strands of hair that had fallen loose from her clip. Her sweater sleeves were pushed to her elbows, and I could see the faint veins along her forearms, the softness of her skin in the glow. "You were married?" I asked gently, more of a statement than a question. She didn't flinch. Just nodded, eyes on the flame. "For 16 years. Divorced 6 ago." Silence. Then, it wasn't awful. Just, stopped being what it was supposed to be. She glanced at me, cautious. "You ever been in something like that?" I nodded. "It didn't last as long, but yeah. That slow kind of ending." She looked down, twisting the corner of the blanket between her fingers. "I lost things after it ended. My sense of home. My son for a while. He blamed me. Said I gave up." "You didn't," I said quietly. She looked up, and I wasn't sure what gave me the right to say it, but I meant it. We sat in silence after that. But it was a shared silence. Something warm. The thunder softened, the worst of the storm passing, but neither of us moved. Our knees were nearly touching. I felt every inch of space between us like a breath held in my chest. I wanted to reach out, just lightly, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I stayed beside her, listening to the storm, and hoping she knew she wasn't alone. The rejection email hit harder than I expected. It wasn't the dream job, just a decent one. Stable. Enough to feel like I was moving forward again. But when I read the words, "We've decided to go in a different direction," something inside me dropped, like a stone skipping once, then sinking. I didn't want to be seen. Didn't want to explain. I just needed air. I stepped out of my room and sat halfway down the stairs, elbows on my knees, hands clasped tight like I was holding something together. I wasn't sure how long I sat like that. I didn't hear her come in. But then, her voice, soft and hesitant. "Did something happen?" I didn't answer at first. I just stared at the wall, trying to swallow the frustration, the doubt, the growing knot of what now. She didn't press. Just sat beside me, close but not touching. The staircase creaked beneath us. The house was quiet. After a moment, she spoke again, not asking, just offering. "I'm guessing that silence means you got bad news." I nodded, jaw tight. Another door closed. She nodded too, like she understood something even I hadn't said. Then, slowly, carefully, her hand reached out, and rested on my forearm. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden embrace, no scripted line. Just her palm against my skin, fingers curled slightly around the inside of my arm. Her thumb began to move gently, in small, rhythmic strokes. Up. Down. Up. Down. The warmth of her touch spread through me, deeper than it should have. I felt my shoulders ease, almost against my will. The quiet tension I'd been carrying started to dissolve under the weight of something, kind. Her voice came next, low and close, just above a whisper. "Don't worry. You're safe here." I closed my eyes. There was something about the way she said it, not like a promise she was unsure she could keep, but like a truth she'd already chosen to believe. She wasn't just talking about the roof over my head. She meant with her. In this space. In this quiet, unspoken understanding between us. Her hand didn't move away. She didn't fill the silence with advice or optimism. Just sat with me in it. Let me feel what I needed to feel, and reminded me, without words, that I didn't have to go through it alone. Eventually, I opened my eyes. Looked at her. She was already looking at me. The kind of look that holds, not demands. Her fingers paused, still resting on my skin. The air between us thickened, not uncomfortable, just charged. There was something we both felt in that moment, and something we both chose not to act on. Not yet. She gave my arm one final, gentle stroke, then stood. "Dinner's in an hour," she said softly. "Only if you're hungry." I was. But not just for food. The next morning felt different. I came down at my usual time, same hour, same steps, same soft light pouring through the kitchen window, but something in the air had shifted. Claire was already at the counter, pouring coffee, her back to me. She turned when I walked in, offered a polite smile, and slid a mug across the table. No honey today. No teasing remark. No casual brush of fingers. Just black coffee and a quiet, practiced rhythm. I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe she was just tired. That maybe nothing had changed at all. But everything had. After the moment on the stairs, her hand on my arm, her voice in my chest like warmth I hadn't known I needed, I thought we'd stepped into something new. Something neither of us had planned but couldn't quite ignore anymore. And now, she was pulling back. Little things. She didn't linger in the kitchen. She kept her distance when we passed in the hall. Conversations grew shorter, lighter. She'd started wearing her hair up again, neat and polished. Her robe was replaced with a fitted blouse, sleeves buttoned. Like armor. I tried to act normal. I didn't want to pressure her. Didn't want her to think I expected anything. But I couldn't help wondering, had I misread the moment? Had my presence started to feel like a problem? A few days passed this way. Not cold, just cautious. And the silence between us, once easy, had turned into something harder. Something filled with things unsaid. Then one night, I heard her laughing. Downstairs. Softly. On the phone. I paused at the top of the stairs, not out of jealousy, just confusion. That sound, so free and warm, wasn't meant for me anymore. And it hurt more than I expected. I sat at my desk, staring at the blank page of my journal. Trying to write. Trying to think. Trying to stop myself from overanalyzing everything. But instead, I picked up a pen and wrote something simple. Honest. You don't have to protect me from something I never asked to be saved from. I folded the page neatly and slipped it under her door. No signature. No expectations. Just a quiet offering, a way to tell her, I'm still here. I see you. I'm not afraid of what this might mean. That night, I slept restlessly. Listening for footsteps. For any sound from the hallway. For a reply that never came. But the next morning, there was honey in my coffee again. No words. Just that small, deliberate gesture, and the faintest trace of a smile when she handed me the mug. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't a resolution. But it was something. And in a house where so much was felt but left unsaid, that small act of sweetness meant more than anything she could have said aloud. She wasn't gone. She was just figuring out how to stay. She knocked on my door just after lunch. Lightly. Like she wasn't sure she should. Would you mind giving me a hand out back? She asked when I opened it. The garden's gotten away from me. I followed her through the kitchen and out into the backyard. The sun was high but gentle, late summer light, golden and forgiving. The garden had clearly been beautiful once. Winding stone paths, rose bushes in need of trimming, lavender drooping from neglect. But even in its overgrowth, there was something deeply alive about it. She handed me a pair of garden shears, her fingers brushing mine, intentionally or not, I couldn't tell. Then she knelt beside a patch of stubborn weeds, digging her bare hands into the soil like she'd done it 100 times before. I used to spend hours out here, she said softly, without looking at me. Back when things felt quieter inside. I didn't ask what she meant by inside. Her house. Her life. Her heart. She glanced over. You don't have to help, you know. I just thought, I want to, I said, before she could finish. For the next hour, we worked in near silence, but not the kind we'd shared earlier that week. This one was lighter, easy. She told me which plants to leave, which ones to cut back. Her voice had more color to it today. It surprised me how much I'd missed that. At one point, she laughed, really laughed, when I stood up too fast and smacked my head on the low-hanging plum tree. I told you it was a tricky one, she said, reaching out instinctively to check the spot on my forehead. Her hand paused there, palm against my skin for just a second too long. Neither of us said anything about it. Later, I got dirt on my face, and she shook her head, smiling as she reached out to wipe it off with her thumb. You're hopeless, she murmured, not unkindly. I looked at her then, really looked. Her hair had come loose from its clip. A single strand fell across her cheek, and without thinking, I reached up and tucked it gently behind her ear. She froze under my touch. My fingers lingered just briefly near her jaw before I pulled them away. Her eyes flicked to mine, wide, unsure, but she didn't move. I like seeing you out here, I said quietly. You seem lighter. She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. It's easier to breathe when you're not avoiding someone. I nodded, understanding more than I could say. As the sun dipped lower, the sky turning honey-colored, we stood together looking out at the half-tamed garden, not finished, but on its way. You make this feel like home, I said. She didn't respond with words, just a quiet nod, her eyes glistening with something unspoken. And for the first time in days, I felt the silence between us turn warm again. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred after days of restless tension. I was halfway through packing a box, trying to steady the jumble of thoughts swirling in my mind. I had been thinking about leaving. Not just the apartment, but the whole fragile connection between us. Maybe I was too young to understand what she needed. Maybe the distance was too wide to bridge. That's when I heard her footsteps in the hall. I hadn't expected her to come down. Not tonight. The door to my room creaked open slowly. She stood there, framed in the warm glow of the hallway light. Her eyes searched mine, soft and steady, vulnerable but sure. I thought maybe, she began, voice gentle and low, you might want to stay. Tonight, at least. My breath caught. I didn't say anything. She took a step forward, then another, until there was barely any space left between us. The air shifted, charged, yet tender. Her hand reached out, hesitating just a moment before brushing a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was featherlight, a whisper against my skin. I closed my eyes and leaned into it, feeling the pulse of her warmth. I don't want to be alone tonight, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I opened my eyes and met hers, feeling the weight of years and unspoken stories in her gaze. The walls I'd built around my own heart trembled. Slowly, naturally, her hand slid down to rest over mine, fingers intertwining in a quiet promise. It wasn't rushed, wasn't desperate. It was steady. Real. She stepped closer still, her breath warm against my cheek. The scent of lavender and something uniquely hers, a subtle, comforting presence, filled the space between us. I've been scared, she confessed. Scared that I'd lose you before I ever really had you. I swallowed, feeling the honesty sink deep. I'm not going anywhere. For a long moment, we simply held each other's hands, the silence between us filled with everything words couldn't say. Then, slowly, she wrapped her arms around my waist, pulling me gently into a hug that was both reassurance and release. Her cheek rested lightly against my chest, and I felt the steady beat of her heart, calm and true. I placed my hands on her back, tracing slow circles that said, I'm here. I see you. I'm not afraid. We stayed like that, two people learning how to be close without rushing, without needing to fix the past or predict the future. Just here, together. When she finally pulled back, she smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Thank you for staying, she said softly. Thank you for waiting. I knew then that this was no longer just a place to live. It was a beginning. If you enjoyed this slow burn story of unexpected connection and quiet moments, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a new chapter of heartfelt romances like this. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when a simple touch changed everything? Share your stories or thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about those little moments that mean the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.